We live in weird times, so why not embrace it and get a little weird ourselves? It is the Week 16 Fantasy Football Waiver Wire Q&A / Tuesday Night Football Start Sit Show here on the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, and Twitter channels. My name is Jim Sannes. I am a senior writer and analyst for NumberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by JJ Zachariason. He is the editor-in-chief of NumberFire and FanDuel. And JJ, we somehow still have 2 games left in week 15, which has been going on for roughly a decade. How are you doing today?
I'm anxious, man. I got a lot of games coming down to the wire with these 2 games tonight. I need a lot of different. I have like some teams where I'm like, yeah, I need Stafford to do well, and then another team I'm like, no, I need Stafford to be terrible. So hopefully it all evens out in the end, and like I have enough hedge life going on that like I can still feel good at the end of the day. But I know a lot of people. I've been getting a lot of questions about the games tonight, and I have to be honest with you. They're really tough questions. Not only because the stakes are so high, and the stakes are so high, but the players involved tonight are not in clear-cut roles. So we have to kind of talk through it a little bit and see how we're feeling.
Like, there's only one running back who has a clear-cut role tonight, and that guy is playing with a 5th-string center and a 3rd-string quarterback in Antonio Gibson. Yeah. So, like, what are we going to do? Great question. I don't know either. Let's break it down, try to get you set for today. First, a quick scheduling announcement because of the holiday this week. This is going to be our second to last Q&A this week. We'll have Tom Vecchio's NBA DFS Q&A tomorrow at 4 p.m. There will be no Thursday football Q&A on Thursday and no snake draft this Friday. I think JJ won the snake draft this past week, so I got to scramble to keep up in our final one 2 weeks or 3 weeks from now to try to keep up there. And make sure you're subscribed to the FanDuel YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, or Twitter page to get notifications as we go live each and every weekday. Again, there's one more day this week, but then back on a regular schedule in the very near future. We can take start-sit questions for Tuesday or waiver wire questions for week number 16. Let's get things started here with Shake and Bake. Shake and Bake has a start-sit question for tonight between Rashad Penny, Devontae Smith, I was thinking about Devontae Freeman because there are like 16 Devontaes. Sony Michel and Darrell Henderson. I'm going to let you do this one. I have no lead in. You pick.
Yeah, I mean, so here's my feel, because a lot of people are going to ask about the Rams backfield. Here's my general feel. We got some nudging from reporters and from McVay himself to a degree. Just a couple weeks ago, not even like this a couple days ago, but like weeks ago, saying, and this was before even like the Darrell Henderson injury and like COVID and all that kind of stuff. But we got a little bit of a glimpse of them thinking that they might like Sony Michel in this like workhorse role more than Darrell Henderson. And then we obviously the last couple of weeks we've seen Sony Michel in that role. But with Henderson coming back, then that obviously means like Henderson's been the starter all season long. He's seen workhorse numbers, peripherals throughout the season. And so we're sitting here and we're like, okay, well, if they're saying this and Sony Michel's coming off these games, where does that leave us? Well, I think personally, when it comes to that backfield, I would play straight up Sony Michel over Darrell Henderson this week. And there's what's making me lean that way a little bit more is the fact that Henderson has had this thigh injury and he has been practicing. He's been on the COVID list and he just got off that COVID list. I think that this week makes sense. Like this would actually make sense to use Sony Michel. And then, we'll see, we'll get numbers at the end of the day. Like we'll see usage at the end of the day. And then we can make hopefully a more informed decision in week 16. But I just think with Henderson coming off of this COVID list and not getting practice in, et cetera, just a way safer bet to go Sony Michel. Right. With that being said, when you're looking at a situation of, this one was Penny, Devontae Smith, Sony, or Henderson, when you're looking at a situation like that, I think of those guys, Rashad Penny is the safest play. Like he's probably going to walk into 15 touches today. I would assume something around there. You have to worry a little bit about his receiving upside, but Rashad Penny should, without Alex Collins, he should see 15 or so touches. And Devontae Smith, over his last couple of games, he has not been producing, so he's a little bit risky himself. So I think in this group, I would go Rashad Penny because there is still, of course, that's my lean with that Rams backfield, but it would not shock me at all if Darrell Henderson is all of a sudden, the starter in that backfield and seeing workhorse touches. And it would not shock. I mean, there's so many directions that can go in, but that's what makes them a more volatile choice, either one of those running backs. So I'm going to go Rashad Penny of this group. I think he's the safest play. I think he has just as high of a ceiling as Devontae just because of the touchdown potential. So I'm going to lean in that direction.
What if you're in a bad situation where you're down big and you need upside? Would you go Sony over Penny in that situation, or would you stick with Penny there?
I think you can make the argument for sure. I've seen a lot of that for sure this week too, where, people are like, oh, I'm up 10 right now and my
Right.
opponent has, or I'm down 10, let's say, and my opponent has Darrell Henderson and I have Sony Michel. Well, in that case, that's not a bad play to go Sony Michel
Right.
when your opponent has Darrell Henderson, because it's a negative correlation play. Or I guess they're correlated, and they're correlated from the standpoint that if Sony Michel does well, it means Darrell Henderson's not doing well. So that's going to allow you to come back in that matchup. So think about things that way. We don't always have multiple games going on Monday and Tuesday where you can make lineup decisions based on how things have already gone down. Use that to your advantage.
For sure. Absolutely. So along that same line, we had this one from David asking about Sonny Michel versus Devontae Smith. So different from before because there's no Rashad Penny here. If it's just those two in half PPR needing 5.5 points, where would you go for David here?
This is tough because, again, Devontae Smith has not been doing that much of late. I mean, his target shares are 14% and 18% over the last 2 weeks, but that's also equated to 8 total targets because the offense just hasn't been throwing the ball that much. But it's a really good matchup for the passing attack. And 5.5 points is not a lot. I think there's a bigger risk that they do just end up. I know that I just said what I said about the Rams backfield, but there's still a risk that the Rams just utilize Darrell Henderson 100%. He's back into his workhorse role. If you were to ask this question, think about this. If you were to ask this question 5 weeks ago, we would easily be saying Devontae Smith because no one's starting Sony Michel, a month and a half ago. We're only saying this because of what's going on right now. But just think that where we were a month and a half ago could happen tonight. And if that happens tonight, then all of a sudden Sony Michel is completely worthless in fantasy. So I think because you need 5.5 points, it's a good enough matchup. I'm going to lean Devontae Smith over Sony Michel.
I think that makes a lot of sense in that specific situation for David. Okay, quick kicker question from Samir. I don't play any leagues the kicker anymore, so this could look very silly here. Okay, Daniel Carlson for the Raiders facing Denver, potentially Drew Lock starting for Denver, which may help the Raiders offense there. Badgley or Younghoe Koo facing Detroit. Yeah. They're 6-point favorites. Goff currently on the COVID list for the Lions, so it could be a positive script there for Atlanta as well. Any preference for you here?
I think it's fine if you want to go Carlson. I don't really have like super strong kicker takes, but the game script should be sort of right for Carlson in that game. I would assume, it should be fairly close. I know that you mentioned earlier today that it was a little surprising that the line was what it was. And I'm a little bit surprised by that too, just because Drew Lock is starting. But I'd probably go Carlson.
I would there as well. Okay, let's talk to Matthew with a very specific situation. Up by 9. Opponent has Russ and McLaurin. He can play Odell or DK. If he uses DK in the situation, he's kind of blocking Russ in a way because I think when you think about the Seattle pass catchers tonight, like if Russ is going to blow up, who will be blowing up with him? And it's DK. So how are you viewing the situation here?
That's how I would view it too. I mean, I think that I'm not very high on Terry McLaurin tonight at all. There's going to be Darius Slay coverage. He actually historically has not done very well against Slay. And then on top of that, you have a guy who was on the couch 4 days ago throwing him the football. I mean, it would take a lot for me. Like for instance, I have Devontae Smith versus Terry McLaurin in a league tonight, and I'm going Devontae Smith over Terry McLaurin. Maybe that bites me. But I think it's the logical thing to do, just given the circumstances of Washington. So if you assume that McLaurin doesn't blow up, which of course he's super talented, but I don't think that you can make that assumption. I might just go with DK over OBJ in this instance. I understand that there's obviously a correlation between Russ and DK, but a 9-point lead and it being a wide receiver, like a pass catcher who's going to gobble up more points quickly if it's from a yardage standpoint, right? So, if there's one connection between Russ and DK in the end zone, it's game over, in my opinion. Yeah. So I'm probably going to lean DK because straight up, I would rather play DK than OBJ.
I would agree with that as well. Let's talk to Larry over here. How would you prioritize Justin Jackson, Devin Singletary, and Craig Reynolds this week in half PPR? Devin Singletary played almost every snap for the Bills this past week, and I am not a Devin Singletary guy, but 93% snap rate, 5 out of 10 team chances inside the red zone. He actually scored, which is like not allowed typically. So I find it really hard to say no to that. What about you between these three?
Yeah, I mean, not only that, but so yes, I would definitely go Devin Singletary first, probably Justin Jackson second, and probably Craig Reynolds third. And I'm saying Justin Jackson second and Reynolds third because Jamal Williams is back. It sounds like from the COVID-19 list. So
And
if
Goff is
Jamal
on the
Williams
COVID list, which
and
hurts the
Goff is on,
entire Lions
yes,
team.
Yes, exactly. So you have a situation with Craig Reynolds where, if Jamal Williams is back, I don't think that Reynolds sees nearly, there's just a lot of risk involved. I like the matchup, of course, but there's just a lot of risk involved. Justin Jackson, you have the upside of, there was the report yesterday that Austin Eckler was on the COVID list, but he actually wasn't on the COVID list. But, you have the upside of what if he gets COVID? What if he is more hurt with his ankle injury than what they're letting on, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that Justin Jackson can get COVID as well, but Justin Jackson doesn't have you're not handcuffing Justin Jackson. And so to me, it's easily Devin Singletary, number one. You might not be able to play him with that much confidence in week 16, but in week 17, the Bills get the Falcons. And I mean, Singletary could be honestly, the way the running back position is right now, Devin Singletary might be a fringe RB1 in week 17.
I thought that too. And again, I'm not a huge Devin Singletary guy, but with the way this sets up, absolutely.
Yeah.
With the way a running back sets up, absolutely. So we talked about Craig Reynolds and the concerns there with Jamal being back and with Goff on the COVID list. What about Amon-Ra St. Brown? Because he's been amazing. They're facing the Falcons. There's a chance that Goff plays this week. Let's assume he doesn't, because we kind of know what to do with him if Goff plays. If Tim Boyle starts or Blau or whoever it may be, then what do you do with Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Yeah, I mean, let's not forget that like a huge reason, in my opinion, for the Amon-Ra St. Brown uptick is TJ Hawkinson being out. And I think Amon-Ra St. Brown's like a fine player. I didn't mind him coming out, as a prospect, but I do think that things are sort of like moving in his favor just generally. I would obviously rather have Jared Goff under center. If I'm choosing between these two guys, though, I'm still going St. Brown because I don't think that Reynolds, if Jamal Williams is back, is going to be someone that I could trust. Whereas St. Brown, 12, and 11 targets over his last 3 games. If he even comes close to that, I don't care who's throwing him the ball. He should be able to catch 6 or 7 balls against a Falcons defense is very beatable. So I would go St. Brown.
Yep, I would agree with that for sure. Okay, new question about Justin Jackson. David is asking, would you prioritize Justin Jackson or Samaje Perine? So we had the uncertainty with Eckler, because I just checked and I haven't seen the news about him today either, about him being placed in the COVID list. And Joe Mixon sounds like he will probably practice on Wednesday too. So possible neither guy winds up being super valuable. So what do you think about these two guys if you're filling out waivers for tonight?
Yeah, I mean, my thing, like the way that I lean is that we've seen Eckler. So Eckler sustained his injury 2 weeks ago, and we've seen Eckler then play a game after sustaining that injury. I know that he wasn't, he was like in and out, didn't have the typical workload as he typically sees. But we've seen him play that game, whereas Mixon gets injured at the end of that Broncos game, and we haven't seen Mixon go yet, right? Like there's still that possibility. And I mean, there's PTSD here, but let's not forget about what happened last year with Joe Mixon, whenever there was this like minor injury with Mixon, and then he's out for 14 weeks. So yeah, I mean, I think because of the fact that we've seen Eckler and we haven't seen Mixon, I would go Samaje Perine. I would also argue that Perine has more workhorse upside than Justin Jackson would if their starter was sidelined. And so I'm going to go. Am I back? Am I here?
Yes, you are back now. Yep.
Okay. All right. Sorry. I would go Samaje Perine over Justin Jackson.
Yeah, with Perine, the only other guy in that backfield is Chris Evans, and he's more of a, I don't want to say gadgety, that's not the right word, but they kind of use him in that way where it's very specialized touches for Chris Evans, whereas like Joshua Kelly would get work, maybe Larry Roundtree comes in too. I think that would be the case there for Jackson. Surfer Dude wants to know status update on Brandon Ayuk. I'd have a really tough time dropping Ayuk for a guy on the Lions, regardless of how many targets he's getting. I think I'd want Amon-Ra St. Brown on my team, but I also want Brandon Ayuk on my team, probably above Amon-Ra St. Brown. What is your view of these two guys?
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up Ayuk in my spreadsheets really quick just to make sure that I'm citing it properly. Yeah, so this past week, he had an 8.3% target share, Brandon Ayuk did, which is a big reason he only scored 4.6 PPR points. But we had seen up until that point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 straight games of a 20% plus target share in that offense. He gets a good matchup against Tennessee this week. I think Ayuk is fine. I would probably, at the status right now with Jared Goff, and you're not going to know this information because they're playing on Thursday night. the 49ers are.
Oh,
I would
true.
I would have to just play Ayuk over St. Brown this week because we don't know what's going on with Jared Goff. If we knew for sure, I think that there's an argument at least for St. Brown, but I'm going to go Ayuk over St. Brown.
Yeah, I think that if you're looking about dropping Ayuk, I think Surfer Dude, unless your team is just loaded, you're probably someone better to drop if you're making that decision right now. Let's talk to Rob here. Rob needs some upside 'cause he's down 10 and opponent has Miles Sanders. So in the pursuit of upside, are you skewing towards Antonio Gibson, Van Jefferson, Devontae Smith? Probably going to need about 20, I would guess, based on, typical Miles Sanders usage. We're not really sure with Jordan Howard being there, what things will look like for the Eagles tonight. But how do you view the situation?
This one's tough because, again, you have a correlation type play that could favor you. I guess it's a negative correlation play between Miles Sanders and Devontae Smith. And so I would probably just go with Antonio Gibson because he's the best play of this group. Whereas, I understand maybe going Devontae Smith because if Devontae Smith's blowing up, that means that Miles Sanders isn't scoring those touchdowns. But I'm gonna probably go with Gibson. I just think he's the best play overall.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. Okay, let's talk here to Joseph. Been stashing some running backs, so he needs to drop a couple of guys. Who would you drop between Ronald Jones, Sony Michel, Eli Mitchell, Joe Mixon? Got a lot of running backs, Joseph. My goodness. Ramondre Stevenson, DeAndre Swift, and Jamal Williams. Who would you drop in that group?
I don't think that you're going to, Damian Harris could be back. I think Ramondre Stevenson is one that you could drop, which I don't love to say, but they're all good running back options in general. I'd probably go with Ramondre Stevenson. And then if you know that Jamal Williams can't help a team in your league, I'd probably go with Jamal Williams as my other one. I don't think you can drop Rojo. I don't think you can drop Sony right now because what if Sony plays tonight and he is in fact the workhorse back? Then that means he's like an RB1 from here on out. Can't drop Eli Mitchell, can't drop Mixon. And Swift, you can make the argument that he's just not going to play anymore this year, but what if they just activate him and that shoulder isn't as bad anymore and it heals miraculously? I just think he has enough upside that you still want to stash him. So I would go Ramondre Stevenson and Jamal Williams there.
I think that the Jamal one is the easiest one there for me. And then I would say Stevenson would be 2 for me as well. Larry's looking for streaming defense week 16. Eagles are facing, I think it's the Giants.
The Giants. Yeah, I think it's the Giants.
And the Bills get the Patriots. So we're just going Eagles here, right?
Yeah, I think I'd go Eagles.
Against Jake Fromm? Yeah, buddy.
Yeah,
buddy. Let's talk to Milo over here. Would you, okay, looking at a Thursday start sit, that's a little bit tougher because we don't really know Elijah Mitchell's situation. So, Milo, I would say hit us up on Twitter once we know more about Eli Mitchell's health, because the practice reports today and Wednesday will give us what we need to know with regards to him. Okay, Greg needs upside too. Yeah, needs 20 points. Van Jefferson or Rashad Penny?
I don't think either of them are going to get you there, Greg. I'm sorry. I think that you probably have to go with Penny because OBJ's back. Van's going to be the number 3 option in an offense. I mean, it's good that Tyler Higbee's out because they might have more 11 personnel out there, which, I mean, they usually run a lot of 11 personnel anyway. But, I don't really mind Van, but I think if OBJ was out, I might go Van. But with OBJ back in, I'd probably go Penny. And really, you're just hoping that Penny can get a couple goal line touchdowns at the end of the day.
Right. And who has the better odds of 2 touchdowns between these two? It's Rashad Penny, given he's running back. So I think that makes it a pretty easy discussion there. DJ's looking for some fill-ins. We got some questions around the Chiefs. And unfortunately for DJ, Blake Bell is also on the COVID list. So we can't go to him. The Belldozer also out of play. Marcus Kemp, probably not going to be super high on the priority list. Tyreek is on the COVID list. Are we looking at Noah Gray? Are we looking at Byron Pringle? Are there any Chiefs who are viable, or do we just kind of say, you figure it out, I'll find my starters elsewhere?
Yeah, I just, I'm thinking about what's on the waiver wire this week in most leagues, and there's guys like MVS that are still out there in a lot of leagues. There's
Amon-Ra St. on the COVID list too. I think MVS
did he really?
List. Did he really? 10 minutes ago, yeah.
Oh, sweet. Awesome. I love fantasy football.
Love it.
Yeah,
love it.
I love fantasy football during a pandemic. I mean, there are options in general out there. I'll be dropping my 15 transactions episode tomorrow. Hopefully that helps a little bit. But I just, I understand that they're associated with Patrick Mahomes, but there's a lot of layers to these situations where, like, number one, they're backups for a reason, right? They're not going to necessarily get open at will just because they have Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. And then, number two, you can't you don't know what the distribution is going to look like. You have no idea what the distribution is going to look like. So it's just very, very risky to just pinpoint one or two guys from the Chiefs off the waiver wire, when not only that, but it wouldn't shock me at this point, just given what they did this past week, if they move the Chiefs Steelers to like Tuesday of next week.
Right.
And then all of a sudden Kelce and Tyreek are both playing. So I wouldn't be burning waiver wires, maybe later in the week when we get a better idea, just be active on your waiver wire and get ready to click add. But right now it's just really tough to answer anything like solid, in a concrete way.
We're going to get the Noah Gray game after I'm eliminated from my Superflex Best Ball Dynasty leagues where you start 2 tight ends. It's great. Love it. Absolutely love it. Let's go to Amplified Esquire. Start sit for tonight. He's got Stafford and the Rams defense and needs 35 points total. Stafford should get you a good chunk of the way there. The Rams going to get you a little bit as well. So not really I wouldn't view this as being an upside equation. I think just pick 2 personally between DK, Odell, and Van Jefferson. Where would you go with there?
Oh yeah. I mean, this is even easier because you're picking 2. I just go with DK and OBJ. I think you have to play those 2 over Van right now. Because OBJ is basically their number 2 right now.
Yeah, I'd agree with that as well. Okay, DJ is wondering if we should check out Zach Gentry with Pat Freiermuth. I think he got banged up again this week.
Yeah,
correct?
He gets banged up every week. Yeah. No, I wouldn't be looking that direction. I think there are other tight ends. I mean, I would rather even go like a CJ Uzama against the Ravens and go that route instead.
Yeah, I'd agree with that too. Okay, let's talk to Andrew over here. We talked about Terry McLaurin a bit earlier. Not super high on him, but we're also not super high on Darrell Henderson. So who do you prefer between these 2?
I mean, I think Henderson's probably the play, honestly. And I only say that. I just think logically, Terry McLaurin is in a bad spot. He's playing one of the best corners in the league. He's going to be matched up against him. He's got a 8th string quarterback throwing him the ball. And McLaurin has not been good in fantasy regardless. Like, he hasn't been producing that well. It's just not only that, but Philadelphia has been really good against perimeter. I mean, just receivers in general this year. And so I'm just not feeling McLaurin that much. I would rather just go for the upside and potential of Henderson. And here's the other thing with Henderson too. If the Rams do have a positive game script, then they probably cycle both running backs in and out in the second half anyway, right?
I think his passing game work regardless. I think that the passing game role is probably his.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that this is my prediction for tonight, is that Sony Michel probably ends up seeing 70% of the running back rushes, and Darrell Henderson probably sees 30%, and then Henderson probably sees the majority of the passing game work, and then Sony Michel's the goal line back. That's what I think ends up happening tonight. Like, that's the most realistic outcome. And that means that Henderson's going to be usable in some way, especially if a certain game script hits. And then there's obviously the upside too, that again, like we talked about earlier, what if Henderson's just the guy still, right?
Yeah.
And so if that happens, then he's if we assume that Henderson was the guy, he'd easily be the play over McLaurin. So I'm just going to go with Henderson here.
I'd agree as well. Okay, it's kitty time. What to do with Dak Prescott? Should I pick up Tyler Huntley, Cam Newton, Justin Fields, or still start Dak? I would say the Cowboys are back at home. They have not been at home a lot recently. They were on the road the past couple of games, dealt with some weather. Tyron Smith, I've not heard his status this week, but he's a big difference maker. So I think there's a shot he plays, not an IR. So I think that's a good thing for them. So how are you viewing Dak? Are you trying to pick up someone on waivers or just sticking with him for right now?
I think that you go Dak there still. I know that sounds like just a stupid move given the way that he's been performing of late. A lot of I dug into his numbers a little bit for my 10 trend show, and a lot of what he's doing is very similar to what he was doing earlier in the season. He's just not converting on any deep balls and any intermediate balls. I mean, his completion percentage on 15 plus air yard throws over this like bad 5-game stretch or something is like Sam Darnold-esque. It's like 29%. Whereas the first 8 games of his season, it was like 49%. And not all of that's him either. I mean, if you watch, we were tilting about this last week with CD Lamb dropping all those passes. I mean, there were instances where Dak Prescott could have had a decent game last week, but his wide receivers weren't helping him, which sounds crazy because his wide receivers are good, but they just weren't in it last week. So, I like Justin Fields a lot. He's running a lot more. We're seeing him basically get you a touchdown and a half equivalent on the ground each week, just through his rushing yards. But I still think Dak is probably the play.
I'd agree with that too. Okay, Kevin has a DFS question for tonight, which I'll handle. Miles Sanders, Jordan Howard. I think you look at this, and Howard could take goal line work, but the guy who's going to get the best overall volume and thus is going to give you the best access to a ceiling is Miles Sanders. So I would expect them to split work. I think that Boston Scott will mix in, et cetera, et cetera. But I think if you're looking for the best range of outcomes, the most favorable range of outcomes, Miles Sanders is your guy there. Let's talk to It's Kitty time, looking for a tight end for this week. James O'Shaughnessy or Gerald Everett available on waivers. I know O'Shaughnessy's facing the Jets, but buddy, we are getting into the deeps here.
Man.
What do you got?
Yeah, man, I feel like I've been talking about O'Shaughnessy as like a deep sleeper every week on my sleeper show for the last month. Because his peripherals are always like, yeah, he's getting a 15% target share and he'll see 6 targets, but it's the Jags. Let's see. I mean, I'll lean Everett just in general with this question. But let's also see, because last week, Everett did lose a little bit of routes to Will Dissly. I think that we might see a little bit more 12 personnel from them today with no Tyler Lockett. It would just make a lot of sense. And Everett also has a revenge game tonight going up against the Rams, which is fun. Yeah. So Everett's going to blow up tonight, and then you're going to want to add him off the waiver wire this week.
Guaranteed 2.5 touchdowns for Gerald Everett. Like that's math. I'm sorry. That's how revenge games work, or benched. Both of those are very in play. Let's talk to Ryan. Taysom Hill or Russell Wilson? Taysom Hill facing the Dolphins. Russell Wilson facing the Chicago Bears. Both those teams are at home. Preference for you between those two?
I mean, let's see how Russ looks tonight. I think it's close. I'd probably lean Russ though right now because that Miami New Orleans game just looks really, really ugly. Miami also blitzes. I mean, we've seen Miami handle mobile quarterbacks already this season, which is another reason why I'm a little bit antsy to not use Taysom Hill. But let's see how Russ looks tonight. Let's see if hopefully Tyler Lockett's back. All of that. I'm leaning Russ though. Like a 55-45 split right now.
Yeah, especially with the Saints tackle still banged up, that's a tough situation for sure. Okay, Ryan is asking for Rashad Penny, Terry McLaurin, or Van Jefferson. A little bit different amalgamation of the same question we've had like a bunch of times. But between these guys, you have a favorite?
I guess Rashad Penny.
Yeah, because we've had Van in that before. Penny. We've had Rashad versus McLaurin. But not Penny versus Jefferson. So we got that one done. So going Penny there. Odell or Devontae Smith?
I'm going OBJ. I just trust the passing offense a lot more to have volume.
I think it's Odell by a pretty decent margin, honestly, there. Okay, Aaron is looking for start sit for tonight. Odell.
You'll have all these players from these 4 teams.
It's always the same dudes, too. Okay, so we haven't had Miles Sanders in a lot of these yet. I think that's kind of a new addition here. We know Sony over Henderson. We know Penny over them if you need floor. How are you viewing this one here?
I think Sanders is probably a better play over the running back. Aside from, I would play Sanders, Gibson, and then probably OBJ in this group. I think that you can make an argument. Penny's close, but I think I'm leaning Sanders over Penny.
Okay, Kitty Time is looking for an ad at wide receiver in PPR for this week. Devontae Parker or Gabriel Davis? Davis gets the Patriots, but had an amazing role this past week, and also is just a good football player. Devontae Parker facing the Saints on Monday night. That's a tough spot, and Jalen Waddle is back too. So who do you prefer here?
Yeah, I mean, look, my only fear with it would be Gabriel Davis if we were absolutely guaranteed that Emmanuel Sanders wasn't going to play, and we, I think it would be idiotic if the Bills trot out Emmanuel Sanders after what they've seen from Gabe Davis over the last few weeks. I mean, he's leading the NFL in red zone targets over the last 3 weeks, and he's scored 4 touchdowns. I mean, he's dominating. He had 23% target share this past week. To me, Gabe Davis is the high ceiling option. And I'd probably lean that way just because that's the way that I generally go with fantasy football. But if you really need like one of those players, if this is like a start sit question, let's say, then you at least will have more information about Gabe Davis's role later in the week, depending on Emmanuel Sanders. Again, it would be stupid to throw Emmanuel Sanders out there over Gabriel Davis, but you just don't know. You never know.
I think they were going to make this change. There was talk about them making this change before Manny's injury. Heading into week 14, there was talk about it. So I think it's kind of steady, but I think is not enough in week 16, the fantasy playoffs. I think that's a tough situation for sure. Okay, final one here from Tanantha looking for a streaming defense for this week. The Chiefs facing the Steelers. We have the Seahawks facing the Bears. Falcons facing potentially Tim Boyle and the Lions. The Jets facing the Jags. Preference for you between these 4?
I'm going to go Seattle against Chicago. Chicago's given up a top 10 performance in 4 of their last 5 to defenses. And, I like Justin Fields as a streamer, but we know that they can also turn the ball over and not score a ton of points. I like Seattle. The other thing with Seattle too, if you add them this week, they get Detroit next week. So you could get a twofer by adding Seattle.
Double dip. Love it. That is all the time that we have here for today on the Waiver Wire Q&A. As I mentioned, we do have a Q&A tomorrow with Tom Vecchio breaking down NBA DFS. So hit subscribe on the FanDuel Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, or Twitter page and swing back here once again tomorrow to talk to Tom for that. We are off on Thursday and Friday due to the holidays. JJ, if people want to find your work once 15 transactions is up tomorrow, where can they get that?
It is anywhere podcasts can be found is where the 15 transaction show will be. And then the article itself will be on numberfire.com.
And you can find JJ on Twitter at Late Round QB and subscribe to the Late Round Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. I'm on Twitter at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. Big thank you to Calvin Theobald, our video producer, for running the video side of things here today. Thank you, Cal, as always. Cole Beasley just went on the COVID list. So
yeah, and that's 10 days. So Gabe Davis is going to
Gabriel Davis has been freed.
And what I would guess happens real quick is that if Emmanuel Sanders is back, he's going to take Cole Beasley's slot role.
And Gabriel Davis is going to feast forever. That is all that we have here for today. We'll talk to you once again later. Good luck on Tuesday. Good luck in Week 16. We'll talk to you once again next week. This has been the Waiver Wire Q&A.